This is my Singer Model 20 SewHandy hand crank from, I believe, around 1953. That's the date on the booklet that came with it. And I have been piecing a few blocks this morning using it, and I wanted to show you a couple of the basics about it. It's very easy to thread because it's completely numbered. You put your spool of thread right here, and this back bracket is numbered 1, here's 2. You then go down through this thread guide, which is at 3. 4 is the tension disc. 5 is up here, 5 is up here, and that's a thread guide. 6 is the top of the needle bar, and then you go right down to the needle. And it's got very simple directions for beginning and ending a seam. And as you may know, this is a chain stitch machine. So if you don't end the seam correctly, the stitching can be pulled out fairly easily. And what it says to do is to hold the needle thread. There's no bobbin on a chain stitch machine. Hold the needle thread toward the front for the first 3 stitches, then move it toward the back so it's out of the way. And I have the seam guide or the cloth guide on there to keep my seams the same width. So I found it just as easy to move the thread to the left and the back, and I don't have to do it to the right. My normal action is probably to go to the right, but I can also do it to the left without having a problem with the stitches. And then earlier, when I had been talking about handheld chain stitch machines and pointed out Becky's video from Fiddly Bits on YouTube, her method is actually the same method that Singer has in the book here as far as ending a seam, which I can show you in a minute. What you do is you pull out some needle thread, extra needle thread, you pull it to the right of the needle, give yourself about 3 inches of it, and cut that in half so your needle remains threaded, and then lift the presser foot and pull the work off the back, and the last stitch will go into the last loop and your seam is fastened. So what I'm kind of experimenting with, I'm making a very small placemat type item. I'm piecing some of the fabrics that I have left that are cut into 3-inch blocks. Now I did just do a seam where I went over some pins. I wasn't sure if it was going to do that, but it did go over the pins. Because it's a hand crank, I can more or less just jiggle it over a pin if it gets stuck, because it's not going very fast. So there's 1, 2, 3 stitches. Pull the thread toward the back. And I want to keep my seam allowances flat. Now there are 2 pins here. That I want to go over slowly. And it's not really getting stuck there, although it slows down a little bit, but I don't want to hit a pin. Like that. I don't want to do that. And I'm keeping, of course, the pins on the top so they're not anywhere near the paint on the bottom. And I'm still concerned about that. I don't want this to get scratched. This is a little bit different from my Gateway chain stitch machine because this has different stitch lengths, which is nice. And I'm using what they call the medium stitch length, and it's a very fine, tiny stitch. Okay, so they say go off the fabric by 2 stitches, pull out the extra needle thread with the needle in the up position, use something to push the thread to the right, and see how I have about 2.5 or 3 inches there? Break that and pull this out, and when you pull this out, the thread is in the last loop. So let me take the pins out. It's a little bit different also from the Gateway because it has what they call a looper. Here's the underneath, and this is the looper. This is the stitch length regulator, which is very easy to use. And what I was impressed with, this actually has a gear. So my Gateway works on a cam that makes the frame move the needle up and down. I'm sure this has a similar frame inside, but it works with a gear instead of a cam. And that makes it a little bit more smooth, I think, and also more dependable. You can see the detail. These teeth hit a smaller gear on the bottom. It looks like it's on the bottom. So I am just now really exploring this machine. I was afraid to touch it for a day or so because I don't want to scratch it. I don't want it overly used looking. So I guess I have to decide if I'm going to keep it as kind of a collectible or whether I'm actually going to use it. If I use it for piecing, it would be for the Quilts for Veterans quilts. I'd also like to make clothes with it. And even though it's a small machine, the booklet, which is right here, talks about all different types of things you can make or accents you can add to things without any attachments, which I find very interesting, and I may explore that a little bit. It tells you how to do tucking, tells you how to finish edges, do tucking, pleats and ruffles, sewing on lace, bands, and rickrack, plain seams, French seams, and flat fell seams. And then it has 2 patterns for aprons and says to buy your supplies at Singer. So really with just the very easy maintenance page, shearing. It tells you how to do shearing, quilting. There's quite a bit of information in here, considering it has no attachments. And to do all of the things I just mentioned, all I'm going to be doing is changing the tension and maybe the stitch length. So between changing tension and stitch length, you can do all those different things. So that's a first seam on a Singer Model 20. And let me just take the pins out very quickly and show you what this looks like. I don't know if you can see the chain stitch. This is the chain side. Maybe on this. It's hard to see that, but it's a very fine, delicate little stitch because of the stitch length I have it on. Now I did, on the other seam I did notice that where I would move the fabric slightly to go over a pin, I would end up with one larger loop. So, which you can see, gotta move it. right here, there's a couple of larger loops. Now I don't know, it doesn't seem to make the seam actually loose though. And my blocks are completely lined up without any problems. So there, I did that piecing right there this morning with the Model 20. It's only 5 blocks by 3 blocks. But I did that in just a few minutes with the Model 20. I like it.